What if Mario had a gun? I've seen variations of fan-made versions of our beloved Super Mario over the years, some of which had insane guns, but they never seemed to increase the fun. Why is that? You see, in game design, many game designers keep talking about having a core mechanic and building around it to deliver a cohesive experience. Mark Brown from the GMTK channel talks about this concept in the Roller Dome episode. The creator of Patch Quest explains this very well in his video, and my favorite, Keith Burgon, did the most wonderful job explaining this concept in his book Clockwork Game Design. So why is it important? Well, if you want to learn, you need to read the book or find explanations by game designers, but I will try to simplify it for the purpose of this video. So why should Mario not have a gun? And what should a designer do if they wanted guns for Mario? In the original Super Mario Bros., we can quickly agree on one thing. Jumping is the core mechanic in that game. And while running is also a thing you do regularly, all the decisions and skills are centered around that remarkable jump. In that game, you can use the same basic jump to stomp on your enemies to eliminate them. Turn them into a turtle shell that you can use to your advantage, or break rocks and collect coins. This is where exciting dynamic emerge, where you land and when to jump. Sounds simple, but you can build a rich game with it, like the game designer Miyamoto did with Mario. What about the weapon in Mario? Isn't it a kind of a gun? Well, maybe. But notice how it reinforces the notion of jumping because it is not long range and you always shoot downwards. It creates dynamics where you must jump over pits and obstacles to hit enemies. And the decision of how and when to jump becomes even more profound. And this is exactly why so many platformers use weapons as a navigating mechanic. So, if you want to give Mario weapons, connect them to your core mechanic, jumping in this case, or consider changing your core entirely. But if you do, you must know it will be a different game for a different audience. But enough about Mario. Let's discuss how we found our core. There are multiple ways to find a solid core to build upon. But most cores come out from existing games, and a modified core will result in an entirely different game once you connect the proper mechanics. In our case, we did not decide to make a game and started to hunt for a mechanic. Our designer Ala brought a top-down shooter demo one day. He made it with his college friends. When we started playing the game, we had a blast playing it. We decided this game was simple, which is a good thing, trust me, and we would love to build on it and take it to a commercial release. I started analyzing what is fun about the game and why it works. For me, the positioning around covers made it fun, not necessarily the shooting itself. I could argue that I could make a game without the shooting, and it can be amusing. Throughout these devlogs, you will see how we built everything around that core mechanic, and you will be the judge if that made the game better or not. Depth. Very rarely do I find PvP party games with real depth. That is not necessarily bad, as party games are usually meant to be played quickly with friends, even when they don't have a considerable gaming experience. But I wanted something else. A party game with depth, but easy to pick and play with no gaming experience, which might sound counterintuitive. You can stick around and see if I can pull off such a design. So how to create depth in action games? You cannot overwhelm the player with profound decisions in a game where you must make decisions in split seconds. In the game Civilization, you can include the most profound decision making because the game is waiting for you to make a decision. But in fast-paced games, designers usually find other ways to allow the player to make a fun decision. A common method is enabling decisions between rounds. In Counter-Strike, they give the team time to plan the next attack and buy weapons. This approach can only work if the match in your game consists of multiple rounds. The other approach is to have a built-in relaxed time to allow the players to think. Ideas like death time in Dota, or that long walk of shame you must do to reach your lane again, or just standing safely in the secret shop. Regardless of how you do it, it would help if you gave the players enough time to let them mix up their strategies based on their current readings of the match. All of that is the relatively easy part of the design of an action game. In action games, what is harder to design in my opinion is to make fast-paced decisions enjoyable. Let's take Counter-Strike as an example again. Decisions like whether I reload now or not. Should I throw a grenade and where should I throw it? You make these decisions in split seconds. Experienced players calculate insane sequences of moves to outperform the opponent in a second or two, winning them the game. To conclude, if you are making a deep competitive action game, you need to allow decisions on short time intervals and longer, relaxed ones. I started with the core of the game, positioning around covers. Then I began adding mechanics to support this main mechanic. Does reloading support the positioning around covers? Sure, because your opponent will come closer while you retreat to reload. So I kept the reloading. But does having limited ammo support the main mechanic? I want the player to stay focused on positioning and outplaying his opponents. After a short discussion, we let go of any ammo limitation because it would weaken the core. And little by little, I started adding more and more mechanics. We wrote code, tested, and kept mechanics that felt right. But we only added mechanics complementing the main mechanic. Only a few mechanics were removed after implementation. That is why I believe in game design theory. It helps you minimize the time shooting in the dark. Don't overwhelm the player. We talked about decisions and how the time to make a decision is essential to take into consideration. Every mechanic in my game is a decision. Sid Meier once said, "A game is a series of interesting choices." I believe it is always true when you establish your game on improvisation instead of execution, like in our game. So I considered every mechanic as a decision, then I broke down these decisions into 3 categories. Intuition or quick, decisions you make in less than 2 seconds, short-term or medium, decisions you make between 2 to 10 seconds, and investments or long, decisions you make in more than 10 seconds, usually between rounds. Quick decisions are things like reloading, dashing, and shooting. Medium decisions are things like the pit. Should I risk my life to drop my weapon into the pit, taking it with me to the next round? Long-term decisions are things like spending your coins on mechs, the most devastating weapon in the game, or keeping some to gain an advantage in the match. Sometimes it can be unclear how long the player spent thinking about a decision, which shows promising dynamics. Spending a coin during a fight, which is a mechanic we will introduce later, can be both a spur-of-the-moment decision to gain a quick advantage or a strategic act that the player was determined to achieve. This gave you an idea of my game design approach. We will discuss the new and exciting mechanics supporting our core, like the pit, a central sewer that allows you to sneak your weapon for the next round. But for the next episode, we'll be talking about how we created interesting weapons that fit our core. And I hope I will meet you again. Thanks for watching. If you want to help us make the game and you want to be the first to try out the beta, subscribe to our mailing list, link in the description below.